Breaking news for your Detroit Pistons, second-year player Ausar Thompson has now been cleared by the league to return to the team. He will be practicing full-time. We'll break down what this means, how long we should be expecting to wait to see his return to the court officially. We'll break down what changes everything in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free to available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. I also want to let you guys know to subscribe to the Locked On Pistons daily newsletter. You can go over to LockedOnDaily.com, type in your email, and you'll get a Locked On Pistons daily newsletter with every single podcast. Subscribe to the personal YouTube at Kuka Hill for Detroit Pistons film breakdowns. And also, if you want to subscribe to the Pistons, Locked On Pistons, I should say, Insiders program, text the number at the bottom of your screen if you're watching this over on YouTube. So, and we'll discuss that a little later as well. But Ausar Thompson is here. He has returned. He is officially back. This is such big time news for the Detroit Pistons. And honestly, I had a few of you guys reach out to me as soon as the news dropped. A few of you guys reached out to me. Could you guys start, seeing the future more often? Because the last few times we've mentioned something on the podcast that something needs to be addressed. They need to do this. Something needs to be talked about. They need clarity on this. The entire last segment was me saying they need to figure out what's going on with the Ausar so they can decide how they want to go forward with their wing room. Less than 24 hours later, Ausar Thompson has been cleared. So I don't know what kind of voodoo magic I got going on. I must have some of that Kansas City black magic going around. But Ausar Thompson has been cleared. He is returning to the Detroit Pistons team, according to Shams Charania, and it was also confirmed by the Detroit Pistons beat writers. He will not be immediately back in the rotation. We know that he's been practicing with Fred Vince. We know that he's been practicing with individual workouts with the Pistons training staff, the developmental team. So he's been staying in as good of shape as possible without being able to get 5-on-5 runs in practice without actually playing in games. So do I think he's just terribly out of shape? No, but obviously he's not going to be in tip-top game shape without being able to play in any preseason games, without being able to play in any practice 5-on-5s. So I don't think it's going to take a while. My guess, this is just a straight-up guess, with how much he's been working behind the scenes despite this, I would say maybe a week from now we'd see him play some minutes. He might be on a minute restriction to start off, but I'm going to take a guess and say you probably see him in a week or so. But this is big time for the Detroit Pistons. Later on, I'm going to talk about what will need to change now that Ausar Thompson will be on the court, and then what bringing Ausar Thompson back to the rotation and having him on the floor, what that will prove, what we'll find out about now that he's back. But I want to talk about some of the things that you should expect to happen. So the first question is, obviously, where is he going to fit in the rotation? Now, in the offseason, before the season had started, and before we had heard from Trajan that he was going to be out for, the start of the season, whatever, things I was hearing behind the scenes was that they thought extremely high of Ausar, and if he was ready to play, there was a high chance that he would be a starter to start the year out. Now, obviously, he wasn't able to play when the season started, and I don't think they're just going to throw him into the starting lineup now, especially with him probably being on a minutes restriction to start off, and especially if the team is playing decently well. I don't think they're going to try to change everything, whatever. So I'm not predicting that he's going to start. However, something I've maintained on this podcast, I've talked with people who follow JB throughout his career. I've talked with Locked On Cavs hosts over the last 4 years, where he was the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Something that I've been told over and over and over again about JB Bickerstaff is that he likes to stay with a 9-man rotation. Now, if you are forced to go with the 10-man rotation because you have 10 just great players that you just can't avoid not playing, then okay. But throughout his career, he has been a 9-man rotation guy. I do not expect that to change. I expect Ausar Thompson to enter the rotation and for them to keep it at 9. I don't think they're just going to add him to the rotation and extend it to 10. I think someone's getting cut from the rotation, and I think some other guys are going to be losing their minutes. Now, the guy I expect to lose his role within the rotation is Ron Holland, which is not a bad thing at all. I would like to see Ron Holland get some reps in the G League. I don't think he's ready to play NBA minutes. He did, a few games ago, hit like a few threes, and he looked good in those minutes. But overall, it's not, I don't think he's been, and again, when you say this stuff, it comes off as like you're trying to hate on the rookie. It's not that he's a rookie. He's 19 years old. He shouldn't be expected to be a part of a rotation that's trying to make a play-in team. Like, that's not what should be expected of Ron Holland. So I don't think he's ready to get NBA minutes yet, and I think that it would be best for him if he was able to just get run in the G League and continue to develop. So I expect that to be the case. For example, like when Ron Holland's on the court, they have a minus 7.1 net rating. When he's off the court, they have a minus 0.6. So a nearly 7-point swing with him on and off the floor. This is not an attack on Ron Holland. He's going to be a great player in the future. He's a great prospect. He's just really young and super raw right now. And the things that he brings to the table, Ausar just does them better right now. So I expect him to lose his spot in the rotation and probably go down to the G League. That's my guess. And then I expect Ausar Thompson to take minutes from Simone Fontecchio, who we just talked about in the episode last night. We just talked about how he's been really struggling out the gate, and they need him to play better. So with him struggling, I expect Ausar to take some of his minutes when he's back up to full strength. Not during the minutes restriction, but when he's back up to full strength, I expect him to take some of Simone's minutes. I expect him to probably take some of THJ's minutes. And I wouldn't be shocked if he takes some of Tobias's minutes. I fully expect Ausar Thompson to be getting 30-plus minutes on this team when he's back to full strength. When he's completely in shape, full strength, completely, comfortable, understands everything, comfortable with the system on both ends of the floor, like all that stuff. When he's up to speed, I expect him to be getting 30-plus minutes, whether that's as a starter or not. As a starter, it's going to be a little tricky. I don't know if JB wants to go that route, and now that they've started the season off, and, I'd say they started the season off decently well, I'd say. I don't know. I don't know if he's just going to go and throw him in the starting lineup. Either way, I expect him to close games for the Pistons, and I do expect him to play close to 30 minutes a game, especially if he does end up in the starting lineup. He definitely will be playing 30-plus. But around there, that's where I expect him to eventually end up. But that's how I expect the rotation to end up for the Pistons. I expect someone to lose their spot, and this is just basing off JP's history. Now, JP could surprise all of us and do something completely new that he hasn't really done a lot in his career, which is go to the 10-man rotation. Maybe he does. But all indications have not pointed to that. He hasn't done that throughout his career, really. And Ron Holland, as a 19-year-old rookie, I don't think really should be forced minutes. I don't think that's good for him. So that's what I expect to happen. I expect Ausar Thompson to immediately have a pretty large impact for the Detroit Pistons. Like we talked about in the last episode, they desperately have been missing his athleticism on the wings. They had badly missed his rebounding on the wings. It's quite literally lost them 2 or 3 games. Definitely the Hornets game. Definitely in this game against Houston. You could argue another one of these games. They have desperately missed his rebounding on the wings. They've desperately missed his point of attack defense, especially late in games. That LaMelo Ball takeover would not have happened with Ausar Thompson on him. They've missed that. And then also, as we've mentioned on this podcast numerous times, an area that I don't feel like people are really understanding he's going to help out in a lot is when one of Cade or Ivy are off the floor. So when Cade and Ivy are on the floor right now, they've played 237 minutes. They have a minus 1.6 net rating. You'd like that to get a little bit higher. I think that obviously 2 games ago it was positive. But either way, they were a losing team, so whatever. But they have a minus 1.6 net rating when they're both on the floor. When it's just Cade without Ivy, it goes to a minus 4.6. With Ivy and no Cade, it goes all the way down to minus 11. So without both of them on the floor, they're struggling a little bit, especially without Cade. Ivy without Cade is really struggling. Cade without Ivy dips as well, and it's because they don't have a lot of secondary creation with one of those guys off the court. They just don't. They put a lot of resources into shooting, which we talked about in the last podcast. They just haven't gotten the return for their investment so far, shooting wise, but is what it is. But they didn't really spend a lot of money at all, resources at all, on secondary creation, because that was where Ausar Thompson was supposed to come in. That's why I talked about it so much on the podcast all summer. So with Ausar Thompson returning, he's going to help on defense. He's going to help on the glass. He's going to help at the point of attack, weak side rim protection. He's going to help in transition. But he's definitely going to help as a secondary creator, as a secondary connective playmaker, as a guy who just can take advantage of situations and make the right read and create for others and play make for others. He is going to help tremendously with one of these guys off the floor. That's where you should see the improvement in his game and where he's really going to impact them as well. Because that's one of the areas that they're really struggling with. And they do have a spot left on the team. I'm going to continue to shout from the mountaintops. They need to get a backup point guard, but it doesn't seem like that's something they're really interested in. But with Ausar Thompson returning, they will get some of that secondary creation. And when he gets up to full speed, he's able to play his full amount of minutes. I really think you're going to see the impact that he'll have on both ends really show itself for the team. The Pistons, I thought, survived really well without him. If you would have, I thought before the season, I thought they were going to have Ausar, and they didn't. And despite that, they are currently 10th in the East. They're 4-7. I thought they'd be worse than 4-7. They've won a game that they weren't supposed to win. They've lost a few that maybe they could have won. But overall, after 11 games, I thought they've done fine without Ausar. So now with Ausar coming back, they should be feeling good about where they're going moving forward, especially for the rest of November. November is the easier part of the schedule. They have to win a lot this month. With Ausar coming back, just in time. Perfect. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill how you feel about Ausar Thompson returning. How much of an impact will he have? What do you expect him to help the most? And how do you think the rotation will shake out now that Ausar Thompson is back? Let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill. When we come back, I want to talk about what's going to have to change now that Ausar Thompson is back in the lineup. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bills, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about a gotcha ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. $45 upfront. Payment required. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Again, head over to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel @Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Make sure you guys also subscribe to the Locked On Pistons Insiders program. You can text the number 313-914-6528. You'll be able to subscribe to our Locked On Pistons Insiders program where you can text with me one-on-one. We'll have Q&As, we'll have trivia. You can talk with me about whatever you want. I'll be sending you guys directly to your phone, text message, any Pistons news, any rumors, anything I'm hearing inside, any insiders information I'm hearing, any Pistons content, anything. I'll be your personal Adrian Wojnarowski. You can also subscribe to the Locked On Pistons daily newsletter over at lockedondaily.com. Type in your email, you'll get a newsletter with your Locked On Pistons podcast daily. And also subscribe to my personal YouTube channel @KukaHill for Detroit Pistons film breakdowns. All right, so what is going to need to change with Ausar Thompson returning? So this is going to be a 2-part segment because we'll talk about first what needs to change, and then we'll also talk about what this will prove. So it kind of goes hand in hand, so make sure you stay for the final segment and finish throughout the whole thing. But what needs to change? The very first thing that is going to have to change, Isaiah Stewart is going to have to shoot threes. He's going to have to shoot threes, and he's actually going to have to make them. Right now, he's only taking 0.4 threes a game. I believe that equates to, 2 threes taken on the year? How many threes has he taken on the year? What's his total? Oh, let me pull that up. Where's totals? He's only taken 4 threes on the season. That absolutely is going to have to change. With Ausar Thompson returning, you cannot spot up Ausar and pick and roll with Isaiah Stewart and have him rolling while Ausar Thompson's spotting up. If Ausar Thompson is spotting up when he comes back, we are going to have massive issues with the half-court offense, and we're going to have conversations about their creativity offensively. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to understand that Ausar Thompson spotting up at the corner probably is not the greatest idea. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to say, oh, Isaiah Stewart can space. Ausar Thompson is good when you get him rolling to the basket and driving to the basket. You should probably have that guy moving towards the basket and the other one spacing. That's something that 100% is going to have to change as soon as Ausar Thompson starts to play. And I expect them to play a lot of minutes together, him and Isaiah Stewart, especially while Jalen Duren's out. And I would not be shocked. I'm not predicting this, so I'm not saying I think it's going to happen, but I'm just saying I would not be shocked if, when Jalen Duren returns, Isaiah Stewart stays in the starting lineup. That's all I'm saying. I'm not predicting it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if they do go that route and just stick with Stu, I would not be shocked. So we'll see what happens there. But no matter what, if they are sharing the floor together, they have to tell Stu to start spotting up more. I understand they want him rolling a little bit more, improve his rim finishing, all that stuff. That can't keep happening. He only has 4 jump shots on the entire season. Like that, you spent 3 years trying to develop that part of his game. He finally got to that part of his game. He shot 38% from deep this past year on decent volume, on reasonable volume. And now he's just not shooting at all. That was supposed to be the whole, thing with him. That was supposed to be the whole point of his development offensively. And now you're asking him to just not do it at all. They've gotten away with it somewhat right now. They've gotten away with it so far. But when Ausar Thompson returns, you will not be able to do that. If you do that, you are actively killing your half-court offense. You will be killing it. And you will be actively hindering either Ivy or Cade, whichever one is on the floor. You'll be hurting them. So that's the first thing 100% that's going to have to change. The second thing that's going to have to change is who closes the games. The Pistons cannot continue to close, and this is going to be the real tricky part. I'm interested to see if they go with unique lineups. So for example, they've been closing a lot of games with THJ. They've closed a few games with Malik Beasley. They've even played closing minutes with both of them on the floor with Cade and Ivy. And we've seen Tobias at the 5. You cannot do that. Ausar Thompson needs to be closing for you. He needs to be your main defender. He's the best defender on the team. He's one of the best defenders in the league on the perimeter. One of the best defenders in the league. You need that. You need his rebounding. You need his weak side rim protection. You need his defensive playmaking. You need all of that. He cannot be off the floor. So what JB is going to have to figure out is this. How am I going to close with Ausar Thompson and maintain enough spacing to run a functional offense in the half court? Now, as I've said this throughout the whole offseason, I think an easy solution to that is to put the ball in Ausar Thompson's hands a lot more. Have him run some DHOs. Have him run some weak side pick and rolls. Have him do some second side creation. That's what you need to have him do. He shouldn't just be spotting up at the corner. That's the easiest way for you to ruin everything. Just use him in a variety of different ways and use him as a ball handler. But despite that, you do need some shooting on the floor anyways. So do they close with Cade, Ivy, and one of Malik or THJ and then put Ausar at the 4? And then close with Stewart Duren? I mean, I think, this kind of translates into what we're going to talk about in the next segment. I'm trying not to get too much into that without spoiling it. But if you close with Isaiah Stewart, it makes a lot more sense because you'll have Stu with Ausar. He'll be the non-spacer. Then you can have Cade, Ivy, or THJ Malik. So it kind of works out easier like that. It's a lot more simple. However, you can still, I think they're going to have to find out, obviously, if Ausar and Duren can play together and whether that matters or not, or whether they can thrive together, I should say. And if they go that route, are they going to have Tobias at the 4? Because I just said a lineup that didn't include Tobias. So are they going to go Tobias at the 4 and then Ausar at the 3 with Cade and Ivy? Or could they get even more creative, like JB did with Tobias at the 5? Do they try to put Ausar at the 5? Do they try to put Ausar at the 5 and have Cade, Ivy, THJ or Malik with Tobias and then have Ausar at the 5? Do they just try to go small like that and just switch across the board? Like, Ausar Thompson allows you to play with a lot of lineup versatility because of his ability to defend every position on the floor and be a defensive playmaker at each spot on the floor. With it, we don't know where he's at as a shooter yet offensively, but with that question mark, you have to be a bit creative offensively. You can't just, like I said many times, you can't just spot him up and play him with whatever lineups. You need to play him with functional lineups and use him correctly. So how they go about doing that is going to be incredibly interesting. All I know is 100% what has to change. He has to close games. Someone has to sit. He has to close games. And Isaiah Stewart has to start shooting threes. That has to happen. You cannot continue to have Isaiah Stewart rolling to the rim with Ausar Thompson on the floor. You cannot. You just cannot do it. I'm telling you guys right now, in the future, if it does happen, you guys will have me on the podcast the next day, that night, whenever it is. I will be on here extremely upset. I'll be criticizing. I'll be asking questions because it doesn't make any sense to do that. The whole thing with Isaiah Stewart is he's able to space and allow you to play another, a non-shooter with him and get away with it. That's the whole point of it. You spent 3 years developing it. You got away with it till now. But with Ausar Thompson back, he has to start shooting threes. He just has to. So, those are the main things I think has to change. Ausar has to close. Isaiah Stewart has to start shooting threes. And I would say this, within the half-court offense, I kind of hinted at it already. I kind of mentioned it. But Ausar Thompson needs to get some of that usage. You need to have Ausar Thompson doing some playmaking, some ball handling. That's how you're going to get to his ceiling. That's how he's going to end up impacting this team the most. If you are not taking advantage of his playmaking, his creation, his ability to get to the paint, and his ability as a finisher, you are not using him to his utmost abilities. So he needs to take some of that usage off of Cade, which should help with some of the turnover problems. It should help with some, like we've mentioned, with when one of Cade or Ivy leaves the floor. You need to take advantage of all that. So that's all the things I believe that needs to change when Ausar Thompson gets back on the floor. Now, when we come back, I want to talk about what we are going to finally get to prove when Ausar Thompson returns. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Obviously, subscribe to all the other things I've told you guys about all throughout the podcast. Locked On Pistons Daily Newsletter, Locked On Pistons Insiders Program, my personal YouTube channel, all that stuff. I really appreciate all of you guys' support. It really helps me out a lot. You guys don't understand how much you guys' support has truly helped me, so I appreciate all of you guys. But this is what the main thing Ausar Thompson coming back will prove. And this, I think, is the main storyline that has to be proved. This is something that I think throughout the offseason, all of us have been asking about, and all of us, I think, especially me, have been asking about. You will find out if Jalen Duren can be your starting center of the future with Ausar Thompson back. I think this is when you find out. This is when you'll find out if you can do it. Now, I hinted, I think 3 episodes ago, at a sample size that I was incredibly interested on seeing. And I said it wasn't a large enough sample size for me to really try to go crazy with it. However, I was just keeping it in the back pocket. Okay? I was just keeping it in the back pocket. I'm going to mention it now. The sample size I'm referencing is when Cade Cunningham, Jay, and Ivy are on the floor with Jalen Duren, and when they're not on the floor with Jalen Duren. So I want to read you guys these numbers right now. So when Jay and Ivy, when Cade and Jay and I didn't include the player I was referencing. Isaiah Stewart as well. Sorry, I messed that up. The sample size with Cade, Ivy, and Stu without Duren, and then the sample size with Cade, Ivy, and Duren without Stu. So Cade, Ivy, and Duren without Stu has a defensive rating of 113.45. The defensive rating with Cade, Ivey, and Stu without Duren is 113.6. They have a net rating of plus 1.88. You have a net rating of plus 0.83 with Jalen Duren. So right now, Jalen Duren has fought his way back to about even. A few games ago, it was a massive difference. The reason why I bring this up is this. Last year, every single defensive lineup that the Detroit Pistons had that was a successful defensive lineup, every single one had Ausar Thompson in the lineup. When you had Ausar Thompson on the floor, he completely warped your defense. And one of the main things that has been talked about with Jalen Duren has been his defense. However, I brought it up on the podcast that, look, Jalen Duren has not been surrounded by great offensive or defensive players. Now, I think he's improved as an interior defender somewhat, but I think he still really struggles massively against stretch bigs. With Ausar Thompson back, you will get to find out, okay, Ausar should help him defensively. I think that's going to happen. If it does, okay, that's one check mark. The thing that you have to find out is, can you play Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren together on the floor? Can you do it? Because Ausar will make his life easier defensively, and Ausar Thompson is going to change their defense. And I'm saying that about a defense that I believe currently is ranked 16th in the NBA. They've already massively improved as a defense, which, look, I think this is my personal opinion. I believe they're fighting above their pay grade right now. They're swinging above their weight. I do not expect them to continue to be this good defensively. If they are, JB is a magic worker because they do not have a good defensive roster. This is not a good defensive roster. This is not good defensive personnel. And right now, they're 14th in the NBA in defensive rating, 111.7. So, JB is working magic right now. I think it's going to be hard to do that for an entire season, but if he does, great to him. I'm going to take a guess that with this personnel, it's going to regress to the mean. With Ausar Thompson, that should not happen. So, Ausar should massively help Jalen Duren, and they should get even better defensively. The problem is, will you maintain offensively? Will you maintain? And how much different does it look with Ausar and Stu with Cade and Ivey versus Ausar and Duren with Cade and Ivey? Because that's a question that needs to be answered. You have to find that out. Now, we had some semblance of hope about that last year after they acquired Simone Fontecchio. We've referenced this sample size numerous of times on the podcast. They have around like a 4.5 net rating with Cade, Ivey, Duren, Ausar, and Simone. So with another spacer, a legitimate spacer on the floor, they got away with it. Their offense wasn't great, but they were good enough to have a positive net rating. The question now this year is, can you play Cade, Ivey, Ausar, Tobias, and Duren? Can you play Cade, Ivey, THJ, Ausar, and Duren? Can you play that lineup, get enough out of your team offensively to take advantage of what Ausar is going to bring to you defensively? Now, a lot of that's going to have to come from improvement from Ausar. Ausar has to get better. It's not just about what everyone else has to be better at. Ausar Thompson has to get better. He has to have improved his ball handle. He has to have been able to handle some of that secondary creation. If he's able to do that, I think that would really help. Obviously, people want to see if his shot has come around. I think his secondary creation will help a lot more. But his shot obviously has to improve and get better. His shot form looks a lot better in the workouts that we've seen, the videos that we've seen with him working with Fred Vinson. But we'll see if it actually translates to the court. If he's improved, that will help a bunch. But it also comes from, you need creativity offensively, you need to use them the correct way, and you have to play them with enough spacing. I will say this, though. Remember, we're going back to last offseason now. And if you listen to the podcast throughout last season, you'll remember this was a big disappointment of mine. Heading into the year, the main point I was making, and this was after Ivey's rookie year. So heading into last year, the main argument I was making was Ivey had just shot really well in catch and shoot threes. I was projecting Cade to be a really good three-point shooter like he was coming out of college. I think you've gotten mixed results so far this season from Cade. I think his pull-up three-point shooting has gotten better. He's shooting 35% from three. He's had, he was really hot to start the year. He had like a 4-game low point. Last game, he shot 2 of 4 from three. So I think he's probably, we have to see how far Cade goes. But 35% with good volume, with a lot of pull-up three-point shooting, I think is okay. Ivey's shooting really well from deep outside this past game. He looks like he's improved. We'll see if that maintains itself for the entirety of the season. You also got Tobias, who is not shooting the greatest from deep, but you expect that to eventually balance out. Obviously, you got Malik Beasley and THJ with that. My overall point is to get back to what I was trying to say. Sorry, I kind of drifted off there. The main point that I was making was you can play those 4 guys together, Cade, Ivy, Ausar, Duren, if your 2 guards are good enough three-point shooters. And last year, they were not. Ivy really struggled as a shooter, especially as a catch-and shooter. And Cade was not... He made improvements, but he's not where maybe you like him to be. You like him to be around 37, 38%. With what we've seen this year from Ivy, you see Cade taking a lot more pull-up threes, trying to bring that gravity to the offense. You got THJ. You got Malik Beasley. You still have Tobias Harris, who is trending towards, getting back to his three-point shooting the last few games. He's hitting a few more. He's also hitting a few more corner threes since I said something about it. So another one that my black magic apparently somehow, let me stop saying that because I'm going to end up getting some, bad luck if I keep saying that out loud. Some kind of magic, whatever Locked On Pistons magic we got going on, as soon as we mention something, it ends up happening. Either way, the point is Tobias is starting to shoot better. You're getting that shooting from those 2 guards, along with spacing from the other players that we were projecting heading into last season. Heading into last season, the hope was that I was arguing on this podcast was you can play those 4 together because Cade and Ivy will shoot enough to make it work. Last year it didn't happen. This year it is happening. It's looking like it's happening. And you got other spacers that you didn't have last year on the roster at the other wing position. So all of that combined should give you a lot of hope for them to be able to, one, play Ausar and Duren together, and to find out, is Duren your center of the future? Because if Ausar can help him defensively, and they have a good defense with Duren on the floor, and they're able to play them together offensively, I think that's the main answer you're trying to get now. They haven't been able to get that answer. They weren't able to really get it this past year with Monty Williams and everything he did. You haven't been able to even get a look at it at all to start this year. Now you will finally be able to get a real look at that, and it's the main question that needs to be answered, and I think we're going to see a lot of it. We'll see what happens, man. If Ivy can continue to shoot around where he's at, shooting 37%, K can work his way up to about 36, 37% with his pull-up three-point shot diet. If Tobias can get back to where he's been, Malik Beasley continues to shoot, THJ continues to shoot well. If JB has some creativity with his offense, with how he uses Ausar instead of just spotting him at the corner, I think it can work. And I think their defense, that is currently 14th, with Ausar Thompson in the lineup, it should either, one, maintain that level, or maybe even get a little higher with Ausar Thompson. But we'll see what happens, man. They need to prove. Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson need to prove that they can play together, and JB needs to prove that he's able to put good enough lineups around them to work and be creative enough offensively to make that duo work. Because that's their core 4 guys. They need to know if those guys can play together. Obviously, Ron, you want to throw Ron in there, but the original core 4 guys, that's the 4 that they're building around right now. And this whole season is about getting questions answered about them. We're going to get that answer. We're going to get a lot of things proven now that Ausar Thompson is back. Let's see how it goes. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Subscribe to all of our other stuff, the newsletter, Insiders Program, my personal YouTube channel for film breakdowns. Until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace out.